most of the world's gold is either missing or was never real in the first place. Trillions of dollars of gold over the years has secretly been shuffled around behind the scenes through dark doors, or the gold never really existed from the start. In fact, this might go down as one of the biggest scandals in the history of the world. You see, back in the good old days, by which I mean before the Federal Reserve started pulling financial levers like a desperate slot machine addict, the US dollar was directly tied to gold. Under the Gold Standard Act of 1900, $20.67 in American dollars was worth 1 full ounce of gold. Meaning you could walk into a bank, slap down $20.67, and you would actually get gold back from the bank. And at this point, the US Treasury held massive gold reserves to back every dollar in circulation. I mean, the system was so elegant in its brutality. If you wanted to print more dollars, you had to have the gold to match. This naturally prevented money printing frenzies and forced fiscal discipline, which, as history has shown, is something governments hate more than giving young people a shot at buying a house in the 2020s. Then, in 1913, the Federal Reserve was born, the financial equivalent of a problem child that starts small fires and blames the dog. The Fed was supposed to stabilize the economy, which is funny because within 16 years of the Federal Reserve's creation, we got that Great Depression, but I digress. By 1929, the US held an insane amount of gold, nearly 40% of the world's monetary reserves, which made the dollar the de facto heavyweight champion of global currencies. But then came the Great Depression. And Americans, fearing bank collapses, did what any rational person would do. They rushed to withdraw their money in gold. This was a major problem for banks because they didn't have enough gold to cover gold deposits, just as today's banks don't have enough actual cash to cover everyone's digital bank balances. The whole system was built on confidence, and confidence at the time was in free fall. So in 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt had an idea. What if the problem wasn't the banks, but the people? His solution: declare owning gold illegal. This happened. Seriously, under Executive Order 6102, signed on April 5th, 1933, Americans were forced to turn in their gold coins, bullion, and certificates to the government at a fixed rate of $20.67 per ounce. If they didn't, they could face up to 10 years in prison or a $10,000 fine, which is around $230,000 in today's dollars. So once the government had vacuumed up enough gold from the public, it promptly raised the price of gold to $35 an ounce in 1934 under the Gold Reserve Act. In other words, the government stole your gold for $20.67, then immediately revalued it higher, instantly devaluing the dollar by 69%. Nice. If this sounds like a scam, congratulations, you have some financial literacy. But the real star of this era, which is relevant today, was Fort Knox. This was built in 1936 and was used as a massive gold storage facility in Kentucky. By 1941, Fort Knox alone held about 650 million ounces of gold, approximately 65% of all the gold ever mined in human history. Essentially, Peter Schiff's wet dream. But after World War II, the US held so much gold that it essentially bullied the rest of the world into making the dollar the king of currencies. Enter the Bretton Woods Agreement of 1944, a meeting of 44 nations where the US flexed its gold reserves like a guy in a Ferrari revving his engine in a parking lot. The new global financial system worked like this. The US dollar was pegged to gold at $35 an ounce. All other major currencies were pegged to the dollar. So if a foreign government accumulated too many dollars, they could exchange them for US gold at the $35 rate. For a while, this system worked. The US had about 20,000 tons of gold in reserve, about half of the world's gold at the time, and foreign nations trusted Uncle Sam to play fair. But if you've been paying attention, you already know where this is going. America cheated. You see, while the US claimed it would hold enough gold to back the dollars it printed, it also secretly started printing way more dollars than it could actually redeem. And by the 1960s, countries like France started getting nervous. French President Charles de Gaulle, never one to trust the Anglos, took one look at the growing US deficits and said, "Nah, I want my gold." And so he did what the system allowed. He sent French warships to New York, converted billions of dollars into gold, and had it shipped back to France. Other nations caught on and started doing the same. This led to a massive gold drain, with the US losing over 50% of its reserves between 1958 and 1971. By the late 1960s, the London Gold Pool, which is a secret arrangement between the US and European central banks to suppress gold prices, but anyways, that's a side tangent. The London Gold Pool collapsed under the weight of rising demand. The final straw came in 1971 when Nixon, realizing the US was about to get cleaned out, officially, temporarily, closed the gold window. And well, it never really reopened. From that moment on, the US dollar was backed by nothing. The US simply told the world, "We're not going to give you gold anymore, but trust us, the dollar is still worth something." And miraculously, the entire world accepted it. Well, mostly. The dollar still functioned because it was backed by the might of the United States military, and later the petrodollar system. But Fort Knox, well, it was sealed shut. And that brings us to today. Over 50 years have passed since the last true audit of America's gold reserves. In 1974, some journalists were allowed a quick photo op inside Fort Knox, but there has never been a full independent audit. The last comprehensive audit was in 1953. Let me repeat that. The last time anyone fully verified the United States gold reserves was when Dwight Eisenhower was the president and people still thought smoking was good for you. So is there actually any gold in Fort Knox, or is it just an empty vault being guarded for no reason? Well, we don't really know. However, we do know that a lot of countries are demanding their gold back from the United States today. And if you're wondering why this wasn't a big deal for decades, it's because most nations trusted the United States to store their gold. It was safe, it was convenient, and more importantly, it let America hold on to some financial leverage over other countries. After all, if you hold someone's gold, you kinda control their ability to do business on their own terms. But in recent years, that trust has been evaporating faster than a Ponzi scheme in a market crash. For example, Germany, one of the most patient nations on Earth, asked for 674 tons of gold back in 2013. The US response, well, it was, yeah, sure. But it's gonna take a few years, guys. But Venezuela, they tried to get their gold back from the Bank of England in 2018, only to be told, nah, we don't think you deserve it anymore. In other words, your gold isn't really yours if a foreign power decides you're on their bad naughty list. Turkey, Poland, Austria, Hungary, and the Netherlands have all been pulling their gold out of the US and the UK, like they know something that the average person doesn't. This isn't some minor trend, it's a full-blown international gold repatriation movement. You'd think that with all this uncertainty, gold's price would be going through the roof, and it sort of is. But maybe not soaring as much as it should. Why? Well, that's because the modern gold market is about as rigged as a WWE match. So there is something called paper gold. It's a system where financial institutions have figured out how to sell way more gold than they actually have. Today, for every 1 ounce of actual gold, there are 200 to 300 ounces of paper gold floating around in contracts, ETFs, and futures trading. In other words, people think they own gold, but what they actually own is a promise from a bank or institution. It's a promise that might not be honored if everyone tried to cash out at once. Pretty much the current gold market is the equivalent of selling concert tickets to a venue that doesn't exist. As long as no one shows up at the door demanding entry, the scam works just fine. But if people actually start knocking, well, poop hits the fan. And this is where things get scary, because if the US gold reserves are lower than reported, and if paper gold collapses under its own weight, then the entire system could implode overnight. So a big question is, does the US actually have this gold? The short answer is No one really knows. The government swears it's there. It says, trust us guys, it's there, but they refuse to let anyone see it. Foreign countries are pulling their gold out of the US vaults like they're bracing for impact. And the gold market itself is so leveraged with fake gold that if people started demanding physical delivery, it would expose a financial fraud of biblical proportions. But this isn't just about a few paranoid governments wanting their shiny metal back, okay? This is about a global power shift, a financial system that's looking shakier than a Jenga tower in an earthquake, and the creeping realization that gold might be on the verge of making the biggest comeback since bell-bottoms and cocaine in the 70s. So let's get to the real question. Is the world trying to break free of the US dollar? Is gold about to take over as the financial kingpin of the world? And are we looking at the mother of all economic resets? I mean, for the longest time, gold was treated as a boomer asset, something your paranoid uncle would bury in his backyard next to his emergency stash of canned beans and ammunition. Governments, especially in the West, moved away from gold, claiming it was a barbaric relic. They did this while embracing the sweet, sweet flexibility of fiat currency and fiat money. But now, suddenly, central banks can't buy enough gold. In 2022 alone, they purchased over 1,000 metric tons of gold, the highest level since 1967. By 2023, gold buying had reached another record-breaking pace, with China, Russia, India, and Turkey leading the charge. Even countries that don't traditionally hoard gold, like Qatar, Singapore, and Thailand, they have joined the gold buying spree. But why would these countries, many of whom have been happily dealing in dollars for decades, why would they suddenly start stockpiling gold like it's a limited edition Supreme drop? It all comes down to one thing. They don't trust the United States financial system anymore. When the US and its European allies froze over $300 billion of Russia's foreign reserves in 2022 as part of their economic sanctions, it sent a giant wake-up call to the rest of the world. If Russia's dollar and euro reserves could be turned into worthless numbers overnight, then any country that pisses off Washington or Brussels could be next. And that's why we're seeing this massive gold buying spree. Nations are realizing that the only way to guarantee financial sovereignty is to hold assets that cannot be frozen, seized, or manipulated by Western powers. And gold? Well, gold is the ultimate FU to the financial system. It's neutral, it's recognized everywhere, and most importantly, it's real. You see, for years, BRICS nations, which are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have been quietly plotting to create an alternative to the US dollar. These countries hate the fact that the US can just print infinite dollars, dictate global trade terms, and, when necessary, use the dollar as a weapon. The BRICS response is a potential new gold-backed trade currency. Russia and China have been not so subtly hinting that they want to move toward a system where global trade is settled in gold or commodity-backed currency instead of dollars. It's basically the financial version of telling the US, yeah, we're not buying drinks with your monopoly money anymore. This bar only takes cold hard cash, or in this case, giant shiny rocks. Even beyond BRICS countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Turkey, and Argentina, they're all exploring ways to move away from the dollar. The petrodollar, which has been the backbone of the US economic dominance since the 1970s, is now facing its biggest threat in decades, as Saudi Arabia is considering accepting gold, or yuan, for oil instead of dollars. That's basically like telling your sugar daddy, listen babe, it's been fun, but I think I'd rather be with someone who actually has real money, not just maxed out credit cards and a massive gambling problem. This is a direct challenge to the dollar's hegemony. And if a gold-backed BRICS currency gains traction, it could cause a financial earthquake. Imagine a world where oil, gas, food, and raw materials are no longer traded in dollars, but in gold-backed currencies instead. The US would lose its ability to export inflation, and suddenly America wouldn't be able to print its way out of a financial crisis anymore. And could this actually happen? It's possible, and maybe. It's not guaranteed and it's not certain, but it's somewhere in between. The United States is like a washed-up band still trying to headline Coachella while the rest of the world is busy streaming newer, hotter acts on Spotify. However, all of this evidence points to something, and that something is that I think a financial reset is coming. Every major global financial order eventually collapses. The gold standard, gone in 71. Bretton Woods, gone by 73. The petrodollar, that might be gone pretty soon. And if all these things continue, like gold repatriation, central banks buying gold, and de-dollarization, we're looking at a tectonic shift in the financial landscape. Some analysts believe that gold might get repegged to the dollar eventually, and they believe that the fair value of gold would have to be $10,000 to $50,000 per ounce today just to match the current supply of money. At $50,000 an ounce, gold is about to be the new Bitcoin, except instead of weird dudes yelling HODL online, it'll be rich guys in suits screaming, "I told you fiat was a scam." And they'll do this while, snorting powdered gold like it was the 1980s all over again. And if this sounds insane, well, it already happened before. Again, in 1934, Roosevelt revalued gold from $20.67 to $35 an ounce, effectively devaluing the dollar by 69% overnight. Nice. A similar move today would make gold the only safe bet in a collapsing fiat world. So is a financial reset actually coming? Well, all the signs are pointing in that direction. Central banks don't hoard gold for fun. They do it when they know something bad is coming. And right now, they're hoarding like they're expecting the financial version of an extinction-level event. If that happens, gold will go from being a niche investment to the only thing standing between nations and total economic chaos. Regardless, the era of money being backed by nothing might be coming to an end, and gold, the OG money, might be taking back its throne. And as you guys know, I don't take gold sponsors or any sponsors on this channel at all. However, I am soft launching a few things that you guys might like. Some of those things are I'm launching my own YouTube course, my own exclusive membership group, and a few ways where you guys can talk to me one-on-one on a video call and talk about whatever you want, whether it's me helping you grow your YouTube channel or you just want to get acquainted and chit-chat for a bit. I can even check out and review your YouTube channel and give you some tips if you want, or talk about investing or business, whatever you want. All of these things will be available on my website soon, which you can check out below, and hopefully it will be available as you're watching this video, but really hopefully within the next couple of days. Anyways, thanks for watching.